So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Emily Wilson. I'm Managing Director and co-founder of FutureYou, which is a small privately held talent management business. So the areas that we have are executive search, specialist recruitment and talent advisory. We were a startup ourselves 7 years ago with the sole purpose, the power to connect. And what that means is we make meaningful introductions to enable personal and business growth. So once a quarter, one of our values is for the greater good. We try and bring our business community together with an event, with speakers, to have the opportunity to do exactly that, to share insights and information of topical things happening at the moment that our business community and our meaningful relationships can learn from. So that's me. This morning, we are absolutely delighted to have both Claudine and Siram join us. Claudine is one of our leading Chief Information Officers in Australia. She's very focused on strategy and leadership, has held positions in the CIO role for Jetstar, for Compass Group, for KPMG, and then most recently on the board as an NED for Cascal. You have your own business, which is Ogilvy Consulting, and co-founder and CEO of HivePix.
Yes.
Which I will throw to you actually, because all the names everyone will recognise, which are fabulous. But can you just give us a brief information and insights on Ogilvy and HivePix, please?
Yeah, of course. Well, Ogilvy and Ogilvy Advisory, we do advisory work, and I will, advise our chief executives or CIOs on technology, strategy, commercialization. Of course, as we were sort of talking, the big, the topic du jour is AI, and I've been leaning into quantum computing as well. And HivePix is my new baby, along with my co-founder, Melissa Hayes. It's a tech and data startup, and what we do is connect and orchestrate product data across the supply chain. So that's a really exciting gap in the market. And as we know, data underpins AI and the quality of the AI that you get. So
amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Something you won't know about Claudine is just prior to Christmas, she got her scooter license. That's right. Which is brilliant. Yeah, not that you would have been doing that this morning on the rain, but yeah, how fabulous. And then we have Siram, who is one of Australia's most highly regarded chief technology officers. Everyone I speak to about your background says Siram is the man to know to do with anything to do with AI. So not only have you led really large CTO functions, you're very strong on the academic side as well. So involved with AI at Swinburne University, with Forbes in terms of their technology council. And you also, I believe, teach or lecture year 5 and year 6 on advanced robotics. Is that right?
That is correct. I believe that kind of grounds you. And
yes.
It's super exciting to teach kids, and very exciting to know how they learn.
Yes.
And it kind of keeps you extremely grounded. So it's a passion.
Amazing.
To continue it forever.
Good on you, Siram. That's brilliant. And you're currently the CTO of a startup, which is Provino AI.
Yeah.
Can you please just give us a bit more information on Provino, please?
Sure. Provino.ai, we started 3 years back. It's a startup, but now a scale-up. We help customers adopt artificial intelligence in a very practical and pragmatic way.
Yes.
We have created easy AI solutions and AI products which people can use to automate back office functions.
Yes.
And make sure that they build a pipeline for AI in their businesses. We've helped customers in Australia, like customers like Linfox and RMIT and Patty's Foods, to start their AI journey, but
yes.
scale very quickly.
Amazing.
It's very exciting, and thank you for the invitation, and extremely excited and happy to be here.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, so the topic of the morning, as we all know, is data. I still say data rather than data, even 22 years later, but data and what it means for your business. What are the opportunities and the competitive landscape? Although, Siram, you said it better than me, harmoniously ever after with data and AI, I think it says it. So the place we wanted to start was the foundations. So a quick recap, really, on the trends and where it started in both data and AI. So if I can throw to you, please, Siram.
Yeah, sure. Look, I always say that it I don't want to go too much into history, but it really started in the 30s and the 40s and Turing tests and stuff like that, which kind of set the benchmark. But really, over the last 10 to 15 years, the technology has come out of the cupboard or from the labs and really helped people to understand it and start adopting it into their businesses and creating value out of it, right? But truly, if you were to look at a global sense, over the last 10 years, AI has emerged as almost a $423 billion market in 2023, which speaks a lot, right? It is expected to grow at CAGR 20 to 30%. And they are predicting at this stage that it could become a $2,000 billion market by 2030, which speaks a lot about its capability, right? There was always a lot of hype around these kind of technologies when cloud started.
Yes.
We have seen the hypes, but the point is that AI is being grounded and it's made real. The practicalities of it is now everybody can see it, from self-driving cars to airplanes to tech in the house to wearable tech and very recently a chip in the brain. So it's real.
A chip in the brain?
Yeah.
What's that? What I haven't heard.
Elon Musk just experimented with augmenting or rather implanting a chip in the brain, and it starts so you can control tech by thinking rather than actually using. So it's all over the news over the last 2 days. So yeah, it is practical. It's easy now. It's easy for consumption. You don't have to be really tech savvy to use a technology like this. They made it so easy. So what I see as a really exciting future is starting from anywhere between simple technologies like natural conversing technologies, right up till machine-controlled ecosystems and stuff like that. We are seeing a huge impact in Australia as well.
Yeah.
Australia were always considered laggards in adopting these technologies, but not anymore.
Okay.
We will see a big improvement over the next few years. What do you think, Clary?
Yeah, look, it's a really exciting start to AI, and last year was definitely the breakout year for generative AI, but also all the other forms of AI.
Yeah.
And you touched on, Sriram, that these are all old forms of AI, or a lot of them are. From AI mixing in with machine learning and sensing with computer vision technology. You've got the natural language processing with chatbots that I think most companies are familiar with, sentiment analysis, translation, and they go into things like optimizing bottlenecks and productivity, and all these older forms have just been supercharged by generative AI.
Absolutely.
And I think this is all incredibly exciting, but it's also come with with a lot of debate as to just how to manage responsible AI. And I think it's not just in the business community, but also in the technology community as well. And we've seen the breakout of the doomers, as they're calling it, versus the accelerationists, and some really interesting, I think, arguments from the likes of, you've got on the one hand, Jan LeCun, who's one of the leaders in Google, who basically says AI is good and nobody has anything to fear. And then you've got Guillaume Verdon, who's also known, aka Beth Jesus, who was anonymous until very recently. And he's the one of the founders of the EAC movement, or Effective Accelerationist movement, and a founder of Extropic. And they all just, they're very much on the side of AI is going to solve the world's problems and we shouldn't slow it down because it will slow down advancement. But on the other, I'm going to say, on the flip side, I think we all know that AI does come with some risks, or I certainly feel like it does, and that they need to be managed. And then you've got people like Geoffrey Hinton, who was, one of the founders, the godfathers of AI, as they're saying, who left Google specifically so that he could speak up about some of these risks. So I think, responsible AI is another big topic.
Yes.
And how we weave that into some of the more pragmatic applications.
Yes, and I think that's definitely is almost like a whole topic in itself, isn't it? I've just been finishing reading Mo Gawdat, who is the Chief Business Officer for Google X, his book on AI, and having two boys who are teenagers. You Google female guitar players on YouTube, and then their whole view of the world is that there are only female guitarists in the world, because then the feed that comes to them via AI is just sharing female guitarists, which is completely untrue and totally inaccurate. So there's a real problem around the education piece on the back of AI. But okay, from a business perspective, Claudine, I was going to ask yourself practical solutions. So what are businesses doing, and where are they starting with data and AI?
So where to start? I think it's if you're looking at your data and your platforms, and from a technical perspective, I mean, you want to start with your IT stack and infrastructure and really understand how that's feeding into your AI, the nature and the quality of the data involved. It's crap in, crap out. I think many of us, the business people as well as the technologists, know this. I think really digging into the type of AI model that you're using, and is that the best type of AI model for the business outcomes you want to achieve?
What if they're not using an AI model at the moment?
If they're not using AI and they're not using an AI model, I mean, I think you want to get back to basics at the end of the day. So you want to, I think, be really clear on the business outcomes that you want to achieve first. And I think that's pretty critical, because that will also influence the types of data you want to feed into any AI model.
Yes.
And also understanding that just because a model seems accurate doesn't necessarily mean it's also going to be useful.
If you had to say the top 3 outcomes that, I mean, obviously it depends what sector, what size business, but businesses can really get those outcomes. So if I, was the CEO of a business and haven't got an AI platform or model in place, think I've got okay data set, what would be the outcomes that I'd be looking to achieve to then dive into this in the first place?
Yeah, I can take that. And so although I'm not a very jargon-oriented person, it's kind of funny enough that we've created this 3 V's and the 3 E's. So the first thing, back to your first question in terms of, there's so much out there.
Yes.
There's so many technologies out there. Most of the organizations, first thing we ask them not to get worried about is FOMO, right? Your fear of missing out is what will put you on the wrong step, right? Or wrong platform. That's number 1. Number 2, it's super important to be practical and pragmatic when you consider AI and solutions with AI. So the third one, where do you start? So the 3 V's is always value, value, value.
Yes, because it's almost like, why should you start?
Exactly. And the 3 E's, which support the value, which we always think about, is number 1, when you look at AI, first look at, is it helping efficiencies?
Okay.
Does it help experience, user experience, internal experience, overall experience of doing business, right? And the third one, obviously, is economics. So if you actually have these lenses in terms of looking at value, looking at efficiency, experience, and economics, you have landed at the right use case. So what we help customers with is actually getting to the right use case first, showing small success, and then growing. But the next obvious question is technology. There's so many out there. What do you use? Do you pay? Very big myth about AI is it's going to be $1 million. It's going to be costly. No. So you would always have invested in some of the other stack, which will have AI features and functionalities, which you can immediately try. Like everybody has Microsoft. Microsoft has a few options in it where you can actually get your feet wet and then slowly start building on it. So technology is not actually a big, it's all available.
Yes.
You just have to be finding the right use case, showing early success, and then growing.
Please.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. And certainly when it comes to AI, I think there was a debate last year on should we use Gen AI? And I don't think it's a case of if you do, it's a how you do now.
Exactly.
And it's being commoditized, it's being integrated into all our everyday business tools. You just look at what Microsoft is doing and the Copilot tools that are emerging right now. And so, yeah, no, I completely agree with that. But I think because it's about how we use it, I think in terms of what are the basics that business people need to start thinking about as well, is as they build out those models that you touched on, what are the risks and how are you building them in such a way to mitigate those risks?
That's great.
And if you're at that executive level, you should also be thinking about, and let's assume you have a board, what is your board's risk appetite on those risks? And I like to break down the dimensions into, trust and accuracy, which, if you break that out, it's the accuracy of your models, explainability, reliability, traceability. The second one's of fairness and bias. I think that's gotten quite a fair bit of media recently. There's some really interesting and sometimes shocking, I think, use cases recently around that. Privacy, IP and security. And I think that's something that I think companies have invested in a fair bit, particularly of late, but that's only going to become more and more important. It is increasingly being regulated now. So I think as much as I think there's a fair bit of investment that has gone into that, it's going to be about really drawing out, have you now addressed all the pieces of regulation, legislation, legal, and I think the last and perhaps the most important piece that'll be a massive focus for 2024 will be the organisational impact.
Yeah.
Because of all the technology, you're going to have to bring all your people on that journey, and it's not just the technologists.
Yeah.
It's been democratised. Everyone's using AI now. And if you want a real transformation that's going to deliver real value, you're going to have to bring the whole team along the journey with you.
Yeah.
Amazing, thank you. Is AI just an advancement of automation, or is automation part of data automation and then AI?
So, fantastic question. So, typically, it depends on how companies actually use it. But essentially, AI is a bunch of technologies which essentially has technologies like machine learning, deep learning, etc., which essentially help you do a multitude of things, predominantly do things which are not easy for human beings. Analyze humongous amounts of data, analyzing anomalies within a data set, or creating actionable intelligence which a human can't find. But essentially, what businesses have started doing is using this to automate stuff. But I'll give you a few examples. There's a company called Amgen, which essentially uses generative AI to do protein sequencing. So they're in the food business. They do protein sequences and use that to actually create plant-based and vegetable-based, food. That's number one. They're not using it to automate, but they're using it to create something new. Okay. There's a company called Autodesk, which is in Europe, which essentially does new home designs based on AI. They're using it for core business. But on the other side, you can see, I'll give you an example, Spotify. Spotify, I'm not sure, mostly everybody uses Spotify. There's a Discover Weekly function, which essentially is a product of AI, right? It uses hyper-personalization, which actually understands your preferences and gives you what you like. Right? Yes. So various businesses are using it for various senses, but some of the more Australian side of businesses are using it for automating their back office processes, like whether it's order to cash or procure to pay. And those are the ones which are giving the maximum impact, which essentially focuses on productivity improvement, efficiency increase, and helping humans to decide much faster and do things much faster, not essentially replacing people.
Okay, thank you. Claudia, when you mention models, are there, standard models that business owners or business leaders can explore or look to adopt, or is it incredibly bespoke at the moment around, where it's utilised and what the outcomes can be?
I think to some extent it's horses for courses. There are some very big, large language models. It's sort of inherent in the name, and they're quite generic. They feed off public data, and they do a lot of things. But they also come with a lot of risks, a lot of biases, a lot of they can be black boxes in terms of not really being quite sure, what it's really going to spit out. And there are different types of models that have. And tried to focus on, I suppose, take a different angle. So what I mean by that is you've got Anthropic's Claude 2, which has, tried to take a more ethical approach to, building out their models with an ethical approach. But, I think there are still inherent risks. I think the future, 2024, is going to be, you're going to see an emergence of narrower, more focused models that are better at doing narrower tasks because they're more predictable. You have a better grasp of the data. You also have a lot of organisations that have taken these large language models and tried to sort of internalise their data, so make sure that none of their data actually leaves their organisation to help protect their IP, to help. So there are ways of, I think, using the large language models that help to protect your company while still leveraging the benefits. But also I think we'll see those large language models evolve over time.
Yes.
To be more accurate, more predictable, more ethical, etc.
Yes.
And, I think when you start seeing regulation like the EU AI Act, that's going to have a big influence, I think, as to how they've been built and how people are using them. So that particular act is it's risk-based and it's focused on the outcomes of the AI model, but it doesn't actually touch on the upstream or in the supply chain side of a model. So it's really sort of up to technologists to try and work out how to make sure it's not risky.
Yes.
And so that's a dilemma in itself, I think, and that's going to. And no one's quite worked it out, if I were to be honest, but the fact that it's going to be regulated and the outcomes are what matter, I think there is some sense to that. You're going to see that reflected in how the models evolve over time.
Believe me, it's what I often say this for CTOs and CIOs. Currently, it is like a kid walking into a candy store. You have so many options, you want everything. But back to what Claudine said, very successful businesses in Australia who are being able to use AI and Gen AI. The first
What's the difference for those people who might not know, please?
Good point. So AI has always been there in forms of various technologies or software which can essentially help in natural language processing, natural language generation, image identification, basically anomaly detection and those kind of things. So there have been machine learning models which essentially helped data classification and stuff like that. So the first thing was machine learning. And then came essentially various aspects of machine learning, which is supervised learning, unsupervised learning. There are various aspects of technology. But then came truly deep learning, which essentially used various neural models to use the data, but what the impact of outcomes. The outcomes is much greater than what you can expect with normal models. A class of deep learning is what gave birth to generative AI, which is basically generation of content predominantly with a lot of contextuality built into it.
Right.
So essentially, my simple example is if you previously, 10 years back, if you asked AI to identify a picture of a cat, then it says, yeah, this is a cat and this is a dog, etc. But now with generative AI, you can say, hey, can you generate an image of Santa holding a cat? And it does it specific to your needs with a black background with snow next to it. So the whole point is using or harnessing all these technologies to kind of create or generate content is what is generative AI.
Okay.
Right? So essentially, if you look at typical generative AI cases at this stage, everybody is used to ChatGPT.
Correct.
For everything, but it is predominantly for generating either text or content which can be used easily. DALL-E, which was a very famous image generating thing, created images which you can use for sales and marketing very, very quickly. So there are technologies which essentially help you do quicker content generation than previously. So that's the kind of fine line between AI and Gen AI. But people have started using Gen AI to do multiple things: interpretation, summarization. Those are technologies. So if you were to feed it a 50-page presentation or a document and say summarize it in 5 lines, it can do that very, very quickly and easily.
Yes.
Without not a lot of training. So I think coming back to what Claudine said is, while there are a lot of these options, a lot of hullabaloo around, oh, there's so many options, what to do. The non-negotiables, which I often say, is number one, where is your data? Are you sharing your data anywhere? Is it safe, not safe? Is it encrypted, not encrypted? If you're sharing data, can the provider or whoever you're sharing it with, can they use that data to kind of improvise their models? Or can they sell that data for whatever it is? These are 5, 6 things which are cornerstones. Without answering these things, you'll never be able to get into, or even if you get into something, you're doing something wrong. So just follow those 5 or 6 steps. I would generally advise starters to say, go into a cloud-based platform like AWS or Azure, which is safe, secure. It has its own ups and downs, but before productionizing anything, you have to make sure that all of these things are taken.
And I think leveraging on that, if back to the basics.
Summarize it in 5 lines, it can do that very, very quickly and easily.
Yes.
Without not a lot of training. So I think coming back to what Claudine said is, while there are a lot of these options, a lot of hullabaloo around, oh, there's so many options, what to do. The non-negotiables, which I often say, is number one, where is your data? Are you sharing your data anywhere? Is it safe, not safe? Is it encrypted, not encrypted? If you're sharing data, can the provider or whoever you're sharing it with, can they use that data to kind of improvise their models? Or can they sell that data for whatever it is? These are 5, 6 things which are cornerstones. Without answering these things, you'll never be able to get into, or even if you get into something, you're doing something wrong. So just follow those 5 or 6 steps. I would generally advise starters to say, go into a cloud-based platform like AWS or Azure, which is safe, secure. It has its own ups and downs, but before productionizing anything, you have to make sure that all of these things are taken.
And I think leveraging on that, if back to the basics, I think if you data science is shifting from something that is artisanal to really industrialized now.
Yeah.
And if you had a data quality program, if you had data governance frameworks, and perhaps you hadn't invested in it and as deeply as perhaps you could have, now is the time, I think.
Exactly.
And and then off the back of that, I think you'll see over the next year, data products are going to absolutely dominate the landscape. And, I think what I mean by that is when you're packaging data analytics and AI and software products, all to deliver very specific business outcomes, that's, the confluence where it's all converging this year. And I think there are a number of companies who are still playing catch up in getting the basics right, because you're not going to get the value unless you've got those basics. And I quite like your frameworks here. I think that's a
absolutely. And I think one of the biggest focus areas, Emily and Claudine, I feel the next 2 years, organizations complain that their data is not clean. Master data management was a big problem. Now AI is coming up to basically help get master data in order. So if you can cleanse your master data with the use of AI, with anomaly, with pattern detection, with classification, then that's a big shift in the way data is being handled.
Yes.
And that will give a huge boost to both data management and AI.
And that's amazing, because it used to be huge, endless programs of work to cleanse data. Data management, upgrade, anything to do with data was incredibly long and arduous. So if you can use AI to get it in shape, amazing.
But what it is also doing, and very critical point, is what people often do not realize is there is some amount of intrinsic bias in data sets always, which is not intentional, but it could be added by somebody who really does not know what's the outcome. So very critical is to look at, is there any kind of bias creeping up in your models, which can affect decision making?
Yes.
This will be the next 3 or 4 years around how do I make sure that my AI is ethical? How do I make sure that the AI is completely unbiased? And how do I make sure that the AI explains everything? So explainability, bias, and ethics. These three will be the cornerstones. And if you want to shape up your career in any one of these, you're going to go a long way.
Any quick comments on that, Claudine?
I couldn't agree with you more. I think all these issues of ethics and even if you get all the tech right, if you have your quality data, how do you define that? So far as accurate doesn't mean unbiased necessarily.
True.
So that's something definitely need to lean into. And I suppose back to what I was saying about really understanding the business outcomes that you're trying to generate with AI, and being clear on what data are you feeding into your AI models to deliver on that outcome? Certainly, if it's backward-looking data sets, it won't necessarily be won't be clean, or it might give you a view of the past that may not be accurate. Accurate enough to predict the future. I think I touched on earlier, might seem accurate as an accurate view of the past, but it's not really useful.
Yes.
So that's
even like the data set from COVID times wouldn't would be data for it's 4 years since the 2020 lockdown, which I think is crazy. But the data that businesses would have during that time would not be their natural trends or.
External data sets are always helpful to sort of complement internal data sets. But also, when you have your AI, breaking it down into its smallest parts also helps to help break down the problem, because it can become overwhelming, I think, because your business problems are generally quite large. But taking the time to break it all down, what's the smallest what are all the different questions that we're trying to answer in this particular data set or through this AI model? What are all the very specific data sets that flow into that? And then asking yourself, is it enough? Is it the right sources, etc.? Go some way.
Yes.
To helping.
Yeah, I think there are quite a few of these cleaning aspects which you need to do. I'll give you 2 strong examples just to see how bias can affect it. Actually, in Texas, they actually trained an AI model, trained AI to become a judge. So it actually handed out judgments, and they fed historical data, but the model was so inaccurate and so biased for various reasons, right? So it started giving out very, very unpredictable results just purely because the data was accurate. Yes. But then there's so bias. There was bias in every sense there, right? Number one, a company in Western Australia, they tried to actually list out jobs, and they tried to do match, right? Any mining jobs which required heavy manual intensive work, somehow it was not sent out to female applicants because it didn't find a match for some biased reason. And they couldn't figure it out until they saw that it had learned something intrinsic from the data set. So some of these small things, which could be larger impacts for the business at some point in time. But that's why I think clarity around what data sets are you feeding it? Yes. Does it even have bias? There are frameworks around basically identification of bias.
Amazing, thank you.
And the last point, which I mean, any Gen AI conversation you shouldn't really forget is a term called hallucination. I think it's coming up quite a bit. People especially if you look at ChatGPT, if it does not know something, it won't say it doesn't know, it will blatantly lie.
Really?
Yeah, it's called hallucination. That's because it either does not have sufficient data or it does not have the context. So it will give you something which is nearest, and that could not be
It'd be still nearest than what we would probably know, wouldn't it?
exactly.
Yeah.
For common usage, general usage, it's fine. But when it gets into business,
Yes.
if it says 0.6 instead of 2.8, then something's off somewhere, right? So basically, hallucination is a big problem, and one of the non-negotiables to basically make sure that when you invest in AI or Gen AI, the models do not hallucinate and they don't tell you inaccurate information.
I think one of the key takeaways, certainly for me with AI and Gen AI, is that I don't think any of the models are sophisticated enough to just hand over the control. And I think it's going to be a long time before we can machines can independently do a lot of tasks. I think it is literally just a tool. It is still a powerful tool at that. I think it's something that almost every role and professional out there will need to learn to use.
Yeah.
But it won't replace roles. It will enhance. It will change roles. And it does not replace professional judgment. I think most models still need a human in the loop to check and balance, to do the checks and balances to make sure there are no hallucinations. It does actually make sense.
Yes.
And I think that's a really important takeaway, because it's not something. It's really exciting.
Yes.
And there are some really interesting breakthroughs, but all these breakthroughs have had humans in the loop. And I think, recently a new class of antibiotics was discovered. That's super exciting. And a new class of antibodies. But they all had scientists in the loop. They were very careful with what data they used. And I think that applies to business and everyday use of AI as well.
Yes, great. Thank you so much. All right, conscious of time, so I wanted to have a conversation around success stories or customer success stories. So where data has fed into AI to deliver some really great outcomes, please.
Yeah, sure. I can start with that.
Thank you.
We're working with a few customers, so I can tell you something which we have done, and it's very successful in Australia at this stage. One example I can give you is a very big FMCG company, which essentially wanted to start going down the path of zero paper. So they actually automated all their all their paper-heavy processes, and used a combination of optical character recognition and intelligent character recognition. But what they did is they built a big decision engine, which essentially can process multiple aspects of variations in the paper. So whether it is freight bills or invoices or credit notes or bank statements, anything which comes into a business as paper is essentially processed by AI. And as Claudine said, if it's all good, it just releases and pays somebody. If they see any discrepancy, a human in the loop is pulled in. And then essentially the outcomes of this is they process around close to $560 odd million per year using AI with very minimal human in the loop. That's number one. They've reduced their time to pay, which is a very critical thing in their industry, by 75%. And they've increased that particular SLA. Third thing is, the most important thing which I like is the humans, who essentially were doing mundane work on checking every line by line in the paper and making sure that the processes are reconciled. They're now happy. That's the most important thing for us, right? So that's one success story. People are using it for automating backend processes like invoices, anything which is a lot of customers ask me, where do I start? Right? F&A, which is finance and accounting, is a very common ground for people to start. Around 50 to 60% of finance and accounting processes, HR processes, or for that matter, sales and marketing or IT processes, they can use AI and automation as such. The second example I'll give you, and this I like because it's kind of changed the way, especially during COVID, how retail has kind of used the technology. So one of the online retailers, if you had to onboard a particular product, if you're selling a shirt, and if you want that particular website to sell your shirt, then you had to onboard that product in a very manual way. You had to send an email, send 15 different photographs, and then they had to check it manually, and then they had to upload it into their website. And it took almost 3.5 months before the product was onboarded. Fast forward to AI and Gen AI, you just just use a simple interface, just send all the photos. The AI will scrutinize all your photos. It will compare all the compliance related aspects. But it will also suggest you, saying people who have bought like these kind of photos. So can I make a small adjustment and improve your photos so that it looks better? And it actually onboards the product in less than literally 2 hours. So just imagine from being able to sell a product from anywhere between 2 to 3 months to literally 2 to 3 hours.
Yeah.
So huge uplift, and product have sold 80% better. And this is a very big success story. And we can see that in Australia, a lot of people who are doing retail, online retail,
Yes,
can use these kind of technologies. Last success story I will probably say, which is one of my most, though I have not been involved, but Australia can see it as Canva. Canva is probably a flagship for Australia's AI, right? They've done a lot. But look, we work with the likes of RMIT, where really we are focusing on using AI for core business, which is student intake, international student admissions, and those kind of things. LinFox, we use it for quick decision making, making sure that the railway system is clean and clear for freight haulage and stuff like that. So there are multiple success stories in Australia, but again, back to where it started small, started with value being the focus, and it essentially grew. And now we are in the stage where you can just add to the AI pipeline and make more sense out of it. So many more use cases, but I'll be happy if anyone is interested to actually share with them real success stories of how people started and where they're at now, and how could that influence your decision in terms of AI or data.
Yeah, some great examples here. I'll probably just add another in a slightly different sphere. In professional services, they, as an industry, professional services has really, I think, leveraged generative AI quite early, because I think most of those organisations realised the significant impact it would have on their industry. And now that they've started to implement a lot of their own sort of internally facing models, they're realising that for their most productive employees, that their productivity has been uplifted by 10 to 15%, and their most junior, less productive employees by up to 30%. And that is a huge, a huge shift, I think, for
and
the
in
industry.
professional services, is that through getting the research and the data and the information, rather than spending hours and hours and hours trying to find it more?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
I think it gets rid of a lot of the grunt work, a lot of bring together of enormous streams of information, of research, even their own internal research.
Yes.
I mean, a lot of these organisations have years worth of amazing data and insights that they try to bring together in very specific ways to solve very specific client problems.
Yeah.
So having AI, perhaps with a first draft, or to pull together that, particularly in that initial brainstorm side, is exceptionally useful. I
always think it's going to be interesting. I'm sure it's a topic for another time, but with professional services firms and private practice law firms, they charge billable time, and a lot of that is for the research and the gathering of data
I actually think it'll change the shape of those organisations,
Yes.
and many others as well, but particularly ones that are based on delivering IP. I think for a long time we've had these triangle-shaped organisations where you have a lot of juniors and in the most junior roles doing a lot of that grunt work.
Yes.
Whereas what AI needs is, despite the power that it brings to an organisation, you're going to need more people in the middle doing checks and balances, more people doing that human in the loop stuff. So in a sense, you're changing from triangle to a diamond-shaped organisation.
Yeah.
And so you need more people who have experience and judgment and who can look at output from AI models and know, yes, this is right. No, that does not look right. We need to review this bit, etc.
Yeah.
And so, yes, you're paying for the grunt work, but actually increasingly you're going to be paying for that high value judgment.
And for graduates, graduates who are going into professional services firms, and you know what I mean? It's from a future of work perspective, that's quite interesting.
Yeah. Actually, we I think very exciting stuff is what I see in Australia is if a lot of companies are using it for social welfare, that's very exciting. To identify disease patterns, identify social disease related patterns, etc. There's a lot of data.
Social welfare, what would be an example?
Yeah, so basically in healthcare, if you were to have a specific community and there is a pattern detected in terms of the flu detected in a very unlikely season, right?
Yeah.
So you feed data for it to detect an anomaly to say what could be the potential reason, what could be the potential causes of water, the air, the pollution, etc., etc.
Yes.
So people have started using it for identification of again, especially after the pandemic, people have started to put AI use into understanding patterns, breakout patterns, etc.
Yeah.
That's one. Cancer cure is being talked about for ages. A lot of people are using it, protein sequencing. But AI in Australia, best exciting part is this something called Smart CRC, which is the satellite handling part of Australia. They own a few satellites, and with the use of AI, they're gonna bring out what's called a satellites as a service. So it's going to help things like wildfires, or control wildfires, bushfires, etc. Can attempt and can identify, there is a potential there because it's a hot zone, and prevent bushfires and stuff like that. So things which are more impactful for socioeconomic aspects.
Amazing. It's exciting to know where it's taking us. So thanks for that. One more question for me before we throw it open to the group for questions. When we said that, data feeding into AI creates value, is that through cost out efficiencies, or is it through predictive trends to increase and grow revenue and therefore profit, or a balance of both? In your opinion, please, Colleen.
I think it's a balance of both, and it really comes down to the problems you're trying to solve for your organisation. And I think each organisation is going to have different strategic priorities, and will have different challenges and opportunities to overcome. So I think if you are quite focused on where do you want to focus your AI, that's where you need to get your value. But importantly, make it measurable, make those outcomes clear, and then you can build backwards from there.
Amazing, thank you.
Yeah, I totally say that it's a combination of both. The way I say it is use AI to explain what you do, and then train it intelligently enough so that it can tell you what to do at some point in time. So it can give you what's called as actionable intelligence. So the value is around basically augmenting the humans with better capabilities. So that's the bottom line. Depends on what use case of business, but as long as it gives you value, which we have all seen, it's got a bright future.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, so we've got 10 minutes left on the webinar, and we were going to throw it over for Q&A. How do they do this, please, Tanya?
So you just, at the top of your screen, should have a Q&A button which you click, and then you can start a discussion.
Excellent. Okay, so if anyone's got any questions, please feel free to drop it in the chat, start a discussion box now, please. And in terms of sort of post-event, I will share the video with anyone who registered for the event but couldn't actually join us for the live webinar. I would also pass them on your contact details, because I think that, you know, we do a lot of work with SME organisations who might not have a CTO or a CIO or someone who's looking really at their strategy around both of those. So having external consultants come in to sort of identify some of those opportunities could be very real. Yeah.
Absolutely. One of the areas I specialize is to help small organizations or medium-sized organizations to get on the AI journey, on the automation journey. And that's something which I've done over the last 5 years. So happy to help. It doesn't have to be, a commercial construct into everything. But yeah, happy to help if somebody really wants to get on the AI journey and bandwagon and understand the problems and where to start, etc.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'll also happy to field questions and have a chat to anybody who'd like a little bit more information as to, how AI can help them, or if they're on that journey and they sort of, it's a whole of business journey, and often it's you've got the technical challenges, but then so many business leaders have to either step out of their comfort zones and into areas that they haven't necessarily played with before, or that they're now doing hopefully collaborating more with other colleagues and perhaps their CIOs having to step up in terms of how they manage their risk with their boards, and in ways perhaps they hadn't done before. And what I find really fascinating is this is a space that sometimes there is no black and white.
Yes.
There is no answer, and it comes down to answering questions like, well, what is your risk appetite? Because we can't get rid of the risk.
Yes.
Or, when we talk about ethics in AI, philosophers have been debating this stuff for hundreds and hundreds of years and still don't have a black and white answer to a lot of those questions. And it hasn't been an issue up until now because it's been down to your professional and personal judgment.
Yeah.
But now IT professionals are being asked to encode their ethical judgments, which is difficult if it's out of context, which context matters so much. So I think this is what makes this space so fascinating.
Yes. Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. All right. So I have a question that we'll go to now. So with automation, do you have any success stories from the induction process for new team members?
Yeah, I just finished one of similar processes for actually a university where we automated the end-to-end onboarding of contingent workers, which are actually new team members who actually work for the uni. It's a very complex process where it has to obviously read multiple data points, but also validate multiple documents. Like it could be, working with children's check or a police clearance form or a passport and multiple aspects. So the automation will read all of this, assess all of this, put it into either the ERP or any kind of onboarding system, which could be Salesforce or SAP, and then essentially also go to the next level of giving the right, access related aspects, creating email IDs, giving folder access, giving printer access, and those kind of things. So this is a phenomenal use case to start. And if you really want to know more about this, I can definitely share the details around this. But onboarding and induction is the most common use cases I've seen in the market.
Amazing, thank you. Question from me, is Australia still a real innovation hub for this? Where are we going to learn and see some of the best practice in this area? How would we solve?
I think Australia has some amazing pockets of innovation and does very well in those pockets. I think there is innovation all around the world. Generically speaking, Australia it tends to be more conservative on the innovation side of things. And there's a tendency, with some exceptions, to be fast followers and not necessarily leading from the cutting edge in the front. There are, exceptions. You mentioned Canva, and there's some really exciting stuff. that's happening in the tech space, particularly around quantum computing, where I think there's a real opportunity for Australia to pull out front in terms of being a global leader. So that would be exciting. But I think culturally, we tend to be fast followers.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's a very valid question. Some of the small businesses do not know what the government offers. So there are programs like the R&D credit program, which means that if you've done something with AI and it's pretty unique, which is fairly easy considering your business, you can get back up to almost 70-80% of your investments in R&D back, and the government is pretty good at it. So Australia has that one very unique thing. But the other point is there are all the big providers like Microsoft and AWS. Actually, they give you a lot of credits to kind of get started on this journey. So people who have really not started, they can consider all of these aspects. Number one, to get initial funding to get their experiments on or projects on, or to consider R&D funding from the government and stuff like that. So if anybody wants to know more, we can definitely share my own journey, because the last 3 years we've been doing it. It's a good area, but a lot needs to be when you compare Americas or any other growing economies. We can do much better, but we'll get there.
Excellent. Okay. All right. Well, I think that takes us just about on time. So for myself, the FutureYou team, and everyone who's been able to join and watch this at a later date, thank you both so much on a very broad topic, to really distilling that down to where to start, why to start with the success stories, and what to be really, really conscious about. So thank you both very, very much. We could easily do a part 2 of this, but thank you for this morning.
Thank you, Emily, and thanks for having us on board, and thank you for the team that made this possible. It's been a really interesting discussion.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
everybody.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.